Italian at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh. She has a background in language and literature, having completed her MA and PhD at the Center for Comparative Literature at the University of Toronto. Her thesis explored the concept of a self-reflective intertextuality in the works of Umberto Eco. Today, her paper, the paper she's going to present here is on Umberto Eco and Laurier, sociale.
Good morning, everybody. I promise I don't usually sound like this, but I caught a cold at the wrong time. When Umberto Eco writes, it is always an act of memory. His novels are complete with what Annarita calls in Lieu de la Mémoire, storehouses of memory, the library in The Name of the Rose, the museum and the computer in Foucault's Pendulum, the attic in The Mysterious Flame of the Queen Loana. And his characters, his protagonists, are always in the process of creating or recreating, through writing, memory. Azzo's manuscript at the end of The Name of the Rose, he's writing as a flashback. Roberto's diary in the island of the day before, Ballerino's parchments, and in his next novel, Numero Zero, it's the newspaper. Moreover, Eco's writing is simultaneously self-reflexive and intertextual, both individual and collective memory. But today I'd like to focus on Eco's recent activity on memory, in the last several months really, which is concerned with the lack or the loss of this simultaneity of memory. But to do that, I'll do what Eco has always done with his writing, and what really this conference is about, by taking a step back. There is a scene in Federico Fellini's Amarcord that Umberto Eco says influenced the writing of his fourth novel, Baudolino. It is a scene where, at one and the same time, a young boy, the same age as Eco's protagonist, is lost in the fog where he sees a strange animal, while a group of boys is reimagining a scene from Grand Hotel, pretending to play instruments and dancing in the mist. The element that links Fellini's film, and in this particular scene to Eco's writing, is a connection to memory. In an essay included in Fellini della Memoria, Teut, Fellini e il Faraone, Eco maintains that with Amarcord, Fellini is here with all his films, from first to last, with the best and those less liked, when he invents and when he repeats, to tell us that film, ambiguously anchored to external memory, is an art of memory, with which you can recount only and always your own memories, your own fantasies, and your own obsessions. In this manner, Eco views the entire corpus of Fellini's work, in much the same way we can view the compendium of Eco's work, since both his fiction and non-fictional writing is constantly remembering or looking back into the past. Eco's works, like Fellini's films, also provide an art of memory. And it is fitting that Fellini's fog influences Eco's writing because it is the most self-reflexive and intertextual element of his novels. It is the most prevalent representation of memory, both collective and individual, in his writing. In Il Secondo Diario Minimo, translated into English as How to Travel with a Salmon, Eco recalls the fog of his native city, Alessandria. He says, "Fog is good, and loyally rewards those who know it and love it. Walking in fog is better than walking in snow, tramping it down with hobnailed boots, because the fog comforts you, not only from below, but also from above. You don't soil it, you don't destroy it, it enfolds you affectionately and resumes its form after you've passed. It fills your lungs like a good tobacco. It has a strong and healthy aroma. It strokes your cheeks and slips into your lapels and your chin, tickling your neck. It allows to glimpse from the distance ghosts that dissolve as you move closer, or it lets you subtly discern in front of your forms, in front of you, forms, perhaps real, that dodge you and disappear into the emptiness. In the fog, you are sheltered against the outside world, face to face with your inner self. Eco's fog is all-encompassing. It blurs the lines between fiction and reality, past and present. You can be lost in the fog, and at the same time you can find yourself within it. The fog reveals even as it conceals. For Eco, fog is the element that best represents the act of remembering or the desire to return to the past. In an anthology called Nebbia, Fog, he describes fog as uterine. It protects you. Legions of human beings would love to return to the uterus. The fog realizes this impossible dream for you. It gives you an amniotic happiness. You have the sensation that maybe one day you will come out of the vagina and you will have to face the world. But for the moment, you're safe. And since birth is the beginning of the path which will guide you relentlessly towards death, fog is the guarantee, a last virtual, that at the moment of death, perhaps you won't perish. Fog is also the image that best connects the author with his characters, who constantly refer to the fog in their narratives. Though in the Nebbia anthology, Eco maintains that he is not the protagonist of his novels. When he was asked in an interview by Lila Azam Zangane in the Paris Review in 2008 to what extent his novels are autobiographical, Eco responds, "In some way, I think every novel is. When you imagine a character, you lend him or her some of your personal memories. You give part of yourself to character number 1 and another part to character number 2. In this sense, I am not writing any sort of autobiography, but the novels are my autobiography. There's a difference." So like the fog, Eco's admission that he is present within his novels has an equally paradoxical quality, what he aptly calls l'effetto nebbia, the fog effect, since he reveals himself even as he attempts to conceal himself. And to consider Eco's work as a sort of autobiography, the reader, as he reiterates in Confessions of a Young Novelist in 2011, cannot give just any interpretation, simply depending on his or her fancy. But he must make sure that the text in some way not only legitimizes, but also encourages a particular reading. The reader, or Eco's model reader, must take into account not only the author's entire corpus, but the intertexts that influence the assembly of that corpus as well. Eco's model reader must take the time to try to decipher and interpret texts legitimately. His model reader must attempt to displace the fog. With our dependence on modern technology and media, however, we have become less able to displace the fog or overcome l'effetto nebbia. It is more prevalent today precisely because of the effect of modern technology on our memory. The concern that modern technology can adversely affect our memory has always been a concern for Eco. In an article entitled Un sogno, a dream, which originally appeared in L'Espresso in December 2003, Eco describes a dream of a global blackout that paralyzes the civilized world. This dream posits an end-of-day scenario that both describes a possible future world and revisits the past. The future world he describes, the product of an all-out war, not a marginal incident like the Second World War, a war made possible by modern technology, with entire areas of the planet turned into radioactive deserts, and at least half the world's population dead from friendly fire, starvation, and pestilence, is marked by a series of negations that link us to a time before modern technology, no television, no internet, no electricity, and by a sequence of verbs that suggests a resurrection of the past. Riscoprirà will rediscover, rifioriranno will reflourish, and riprenderanno will take up again. Consequently, the survivors in Eco's dream, his family and friends included, are forced to return to more traditional modes of living. They rediscover what today we would consider antiquated methods of communication. He says communication will be handled by carrier pigeons. Education, I would do my bit by teaching grammar and history, he says, but not geography. I'll assemble my grandchildren and their friends and tutor them at home. First calligraphy, and then gradually give them philosophy lessons. And narrating. I will sit of an evening, he says, and amuse my grandchildren, by now bereft of television, by reading them old books of fairy tales found in the attic, or by retelling them about the world before the war. And this last point is the crux of Eco's dream, and it is one that raises many questions. In telling his grandchildren about the world before the war, how will he decide what to tell them? Will he recount some events and leave others out? Will he rely on historical texts, if they even survive the scenario? Or will he rely on his own personal knowledge and memory? Since everything Eco retells, narrates, and teaches must, by necessity, develop from a process of memory, inevitably, in his dream, it is memory that saves the world. But how do we save and preserve memory? Eco's answer is to learn legitimately how to revisit the past, exercise our memory of the past, both collective and individual, learn how to decipher and interpret information so that it can be stored in our memory. Essentially, in order to be able to decipher and interpret information of the past to have relevance in our present world, we would need to be model readers all the time. Only then could we understand the irrevocable link between the past, the present, and the future. For Eco, however, it is precisely this link that is affected by our dependence on modern technology and mass and social media. The absence of this relationship with the past, with our collective memory, inevitably affects the way we remember. But Eco also believes that it adversely influences our social behaviors. We forget how to socialize with others. And this, coupled with the loss of memory, is what Eco rightly calls an Alzheimer's sociale. Now, to be clear, Eco is not saying that all modern technology is bad and that all mass and social media is bad as well. He has a tablet. He's probably binge watching Breaking Bad as I speak, right? But he's saying that our overdependence can have adverse effects on how we remember. And not only on the way we remember, but also on how we behave. Over the course of the last few months, Eco has been defending more and more the merits of the art and practice of memory against a generation of mostly young people whose memories have been and continue to be shortened by dependency on technology and on mass and social media. In April, while promoting the upcoming 2015 Festival de la Comunicazione in Camogli, Eco regarded the theme of the festival, the problem of language, and its initiatives as sacrosanct battles to revive the practice of memory and to combat against l'Alzheimer's sociale, social Alzheimer's. Though Eco does not go on to define the term social Alzheimer's, it is clear that from his most recent work and appearances that he is referring to the effect of technology and media on memory and our social behaviors. This past May, Eco sat down with Davide Ferrario for a 3-part interview that you can find on YouTube, it's actually really terrific, on memory, where he describes this dependency on technology as a problematic one. The problem of memory, he says, that seems to me particularly urgent, was anticipated by Isaac Asimov in the 50s. He imagined a society by now completely dominated by computers, where, during a difficult period of war, a blackout blocked every computer. Military operatives succeeded in finding the only person in the world who still knew the times tables by heart. He was captured by the Pentagon because only he could allow the war to continue and to defeat the enemy. It was a prophetic tale. More and more today, people are unable to make calculations by way of memory because they're used to pressing a button. This will end up atrophying the organ of memory of the young generation. Following that, in May, at his honoris laurea causa in June at the Università di Torino, Eco continues to voice his concern on the effects of technology and media on memory. His comments about Twitter and social media, that those who at one time limited themselves to saying foolish things at the local bar, now have the possibility to broadcast them online, and their opinions have the same authority as Nobel Prize winners, quickly caused an incendiary reaction. Tweeters everywhere were offended by his remarks, but missed the point. At the Festival of Comunicazione just a few weeks ago, on September 15, he defends his position in his paper. In his essay, Tu lei, la memoria e l'insulto, Eco discusses the loss of the formal lei in Italian and the generalized you form as a generational loss of historical memory. The fact is, he says, that our relationship with the past has changed, probably even in school. At one time, we were interested in the past because there wasn't much news of the present. If we think of it, the daily newspaper presented all the day's news in 8 pages. With mass media, an immense amount of information on the present is diffused. And with the internet, I can receive news on millions of things that are happening at this very moment, even the most irrelevant. The past that the mass media speaks to us about, for example, the stories of the Roman emperors or of Richard Lionheart, and even the First World War circulate through Hollywood and other similar industries at the same time as information of the present, and it is very difficult that a consumer understands the temporal difference between Spartacus and Richard Lionheart. Likewise, he or she loses the ability to distinguish between fiction and reality, which he points out was proven by the reactions on Twitter to his comments. He says, "In the online discussions that followed my comments, I found one in which, starting from the idea of a Nobel Prize, some were confused and thought I had one. Others said it wasn't true, and they bounced their mutual opinions and insults without any of them thinking to consult Wikipedia. Imbeciles," he continues, "who can use the internet to gather an immense amount of information, renounced this possibility because they were too occupied with chatting amongst themselves. This is how memory of not only the past, but also the present is lost." More often than not, an Alzheimer's sociale occurs when, with the presence of social media like Twitter and Facebook, the ability to decipher and distinguish information legitimately is lost. In Eco's case, the issue, the point he was trying to make when he made those comments, was lost within the debate, the chatting. Those comments became the authority. And Eco isn't judging the chatters or the bloggers or the tweeters. Actually, he is sympathetic of them. Often, internet users are bombarded with so much information at once that they are unable to distinguish between relevant and irrelevant information. This is true for the current generation of young students and internet users who, perhaps, he says, were not told too little information, but were given too much information and were not able to select which information was worth remembering. They had imprecise notions of the past, not because they were never told of the past, but because useful and reliable information were confused and buried under too much irrelevant information. Uncontrolled access to various sources runs the risk of not knowing how to distinguish between indispensable information from those more or less irrational. So how do we prevent an Alzheimer's sociale? For the most part, I believe Eco has already provided the solution through his writing and writing process, particularly of his novels, from Il Nome della Rosa to his most current one, half the size of his other novels, Numero Zero. But, however, he is more explicit about how to prevent an Alzheimer's sociale, or memory loss, in a letter to his grandson that he publishes in December 2014. And the title of it is, "Dear Grandson, Learn by Heart." He says, "I wanted to talk to you about a sickness that has struck your generation, and those even older than you who probably already go to university, the loss of memory. It's true that if you need to know who Charlemagne is or where Kuala Lumpur is, all you have to do is push a few buttons, and the internet will tell you quickly. Do it only when you need to, but after you do it, try to remember the information so that you're not obligated to search it a second time. The risk is, because you think your computer can tell you the answers instantly, you lose the enthusiasm for putting it in your head. Memory is a muscle, like those of the legs. If you don't exercise it, it shrivels up. They shrivel up. Furthermore, since for everyone there is the risk of developing Alzheimer's when we get old, one of the ways to prevent this unpleasant disease is to practice memory. Have you ever asked yourself why computers at one time were called electronic brains? It's because they were conceptualized on the model of our brain. But our brains have more connections than a computer. It's a type of computer that can hold you back, but that can grow and strengthen itself with exercise. While the computer you have on your table, the computer you have on your table, the more you use it, the more it loses speed, and after a few years you have to change it. On the other hand, your brain can last up to 90 years. And if you've kept it in good form, you'll remember more then than you do now. And for free. And why is it important to know what happened in the past? Because many times events which happened in the past will explain to you why certain things happen today. It's a way of enriching our memory. And you can do this even on the internet, which should be used not only for chatting with your friends, but also, so to speak, to chat with the history of the world. Everything is material for memory. There will come a day in which you will be old and you will feel as if you've lived 1,000 lives, while your friends who did not cultivate their memory will have lived only one life, melancholy and devoid of great emotion. Therefore, cultivate your memory, and starting tomorrow, learn by heart La Vispa Teresa. Thank you.